In this episode of ICS Connects, I'm talking to Ori Lahav, and we talk about how our industry is changing in this COVID-19 environment and what PCOs are doing to change meetings moving forward. So listen in and let's explore the future of exchange. Welcome back to ICS Connects. I'm here today with Ori Lahav, the Vice President of Clients and Operations at Kennis Group, and also the President of the International Association of Professional Congress Organizers, IAPCO. Welcome to ICS Connects, Ori.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you for having me.
Ori, quickly before we go into the depth of it, how are you doing? How are things in Tel Aviv where you are right now?
So in Tel Aviv, the situation is not really good. We are in the peak of the second wave that has started a couple of weeks ago, which we also see now in Europe as well. So the number of people getting infected are getting higher. But on a positive note, the people who are in critical conditions in hospital remains stable, not increasing. So that's, might be a positive note until then. Now, some of the restrictions that we will have to face in the, let's say, the first outbreak, some of them are coming back, but I mean, less, as you can see, I'm in the office today. So we can still come to we're allowed to come to the office with some restrictions, but it's more open than the first wave.
Fantastic. And your family and all our friends at Kennis are doing okay?
Everybody are safe and healthy.
Excellent. Most important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your role as IAPCO president. You took over the IAPCO presidency in February in Vancouver. I remember it quite well. And since then, the world has changed a lot. So how do you see the industry right now, and how are PCOs faring in this whole situation that we find ourselves in right now with COVID-19?
Yeah, once I took over in February from you, Matthias, we were only introduced into COVID. It was just, in the early stages in Asia. We couldn't even imagine what will happen in a couple of months or a couple of weeks. So speak about timing of life of taking this role on myself. But I think that, of course, as the association president, I have a huge responsibility for the association and its members. And I had a lot of sleepless nights and really concerned about making sure the viability of the association and the financial stability, because we couldn't know, and we still don't know how many members will actually, stay as an association members, because a lot of our PCOs, colleagues in the industry are in a huge financial risk. Most of them, there's no in-person meeting at all worldwide. Maybe now we see a little bit of opening, and therefore, huge financial risks for some of them. Mm-hmm. So we had to take some hard decision to ensure financial stability for the association, but then also to ensure that we still bring value to our members. And we took it in a few steps. The first step was, again, ensuring that we bring the education it's one of our best products of IAPCO. So we ensure that we provide continue this education through webinars, with the virtual world, to our members, and ensure that they know how to face the new reality. So how do you do a virtual meeting? What is a virtual meeting? Or what is the next step of hybrid? And then the next stage, we realized that we actually have to open this content also to the entire ecosystem, the entire industry. So we all are aligned and we are all speaking the same language. That's what we did, and we got really good and positive feedback. And now we are actually in the third stage that was announced a few days ago, and will be something that is coming soon in a couple of days. But we are moving from what I call defense to offense. So we had to absorb to the pandemic. We had to adapt quickly, but now we need to bring business meeting again.
Mm-hmm. I think defense to offense is a great kind of like segue now. Kind of like, how do you think we will have to change meetings moving forward? Kind of what's a meeting looking like, in your opinion, in 21? But also 22, 23 moving forward. So what's the evolution that we probably will go through?
I mean, every crisis is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to change, to adapt to the new reality. If in the past, I'll start with hybrid, because it was a big buzzword a couple of years now, but it wasn't actually translated to real action. So yeah, we actually streamed some of the sessions in some of our conferences and so forth. But now the new virtual space is dominant, and everybody's had to adapt to it. So more and more of our clients, of our stakeholders, understand the value of being connected. And therefore, I think that in-person meeting in the future will always be hybrid, or they always have a hybrid component. And there's, of course, different levels. I mean, the basic level we just stream some of the session, but that's not real what I call hybrid meeting. And of course, the second level is to not only stream, but make sure that you interact and engage with people at home, that you provide additional content or additional value for them. And maybe the third stage will be what we call multi-hub. So it won't be in one place, it will be in multiple places around the world, allowing people to meet in person, but also join virtually. So it will be a huge combination. So I guess that in the future, there will be only a few in-person meetings that will be isolated from the virtual world. The majority will then be connected as well.
So short term, or mid to short term, when we look at 21 and we see kind of like more and more meetings are getting pushed further to the end of 21 or even out of 21. Do you see kind of 21 being similar in the amount of virtual meetings we see this year? Or do you think we will see a moment of, they call it Zoom fatigue, virtual meeting fatigue, and we'll have to come up with something else? What's your opinion on this?
I mean, I can share with you what I see with my clients, especially those who already did the virtual one. Those who finished that a couple of weeks ago or were scheduled to March or April and did the virtual one, understand that there is value, and the delegates or the participants were actually happy with the content and the way it was produced. So if their meeting is scheduled to April, they planned it hybrid anyhow. So they say, if I'm not going to be able to do a meeting, whatever, in Italy or in Singapore, then it will turn virtually. Those who didn't have any experience in virtual are the one who are still pushing for the end of 21 to, hoping that that will be a regular meeting. So I think that they in order to be convinced in a way that virtual can work, they have to experience one, and the rest are still pushing. Of course, all of us think that we cannot only live in a virtual meeting space, because we all know the value of business meeting is much more than it's not just the economical impact on the destination, it's much, much more. And we understand the importance. So we'll have to see how we push them to go toward hybrid, and of course to reduce the risk and do it in the end of 21.
So 21 will, in that sense, be almost, let's say, at least an equally challenging year, because the novelty factor of the virtual meetings has worn off. We still don't know exactly what's going to happen, and we can say we're more prepared, but that doesn't mean that people will actually enjoy the virtual meeting space any more than they do this year, especially if they had a hard time adjusting to it this year. Do you see the funding models changing drastically over time for virtual meetings? I mean, this year when you change things moving fairly quickly, there's already money committed from companies as well from individuals, so easier to transfer it over into a virtual meeting. But when we start from scratch, do you think the funding models still work the same way as they work for traditional meetings?
No, I think we'll have to look at things differently in a way. So when you say funding, I actually think about two things. One, of course, the support of the industry to those association meetings, which is one thing. And the other thing is the commitment we as PCO made already to the suppliers. So if we look at 2020, it was easier to extract back the whatever you invested, because it's a clear force majeure. Government are not allowing in-person public gathering. So of course, the contract is usually not valid, although it's not clear cut, but it was easy to extract back the expense. If you're already committed to 21, that's not going to be, it's not very clear if you can extract. So for example, in France, they allow public gathering and business event for 1st of September, up to 5,000 people. But can you hold an international meeting? Probably not, because people cannot travel to France. So it's going to be only, more of a national level. Is the force majeure still valid? Can you recover the investment? So I'm concerned about the investment already committed for 21. So that's on the expense side. On the income side, we need to be very creative in what we offer these sponsors, because for them, it's very challenging to support a virtual meeting, because in an in-person meeting, when I have an exhibit booth, of course, there's always the question, what is the return on investment for them on the exhibition space and so forth, but they still see the people. They still see the people that standing near the booth. They can interact with people. And in the virtual space, they see a virtual booth, but they don't see anybody standing next to the booth. Although they might have hundreds of people actually visiting their booth, but they don't see them. And that's a real, psychological obstacle for them. Although we need to, of course, to train them and teach them and educate them how to interact with the delegates in the virtual world, but it's more it's more challenging for them to see the return on investment. So you need to be very creative in what you can offer them, and of course what they will look for, what will try to shift them, is to support more on the educational content. And how do you support more of the educational content, not only in the days of the events, but all year round, and to support the association with this educational content.
And that's going to be challenging, especially when you have CME courses and you have to run with CME requirements as well. So a lot cut out for us to figure it out. And in that sense, do you feel we as PCOs we have the right skill set right now for what is needed moving forward, or even what's needed right now? What do you feel our challenges are as a profession? Because I think we always had to adapt a lot, but what we had to adapt to in the last few months was quite something.
Yeah, I mean, this crisis has accelerated many of the trends of the skill sets needed.
Yeah.
And if the World Economic Forum, I think it published an article in 2018 about what's going to be the skills that needed by employees by 2022. They couldn't imagine the acceleration that will happen due to the pandemic. So of course, we need a different skill sets or abilities within our teams. People that can, are creative on one hand, analytical on the other hand, problem solvers, and people that can work in an agile environment. We are used to plan 2-3 years ahead in the meeting industry, right? We sometimes bid on congresses 5 years from now, but now we have to, shift in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks, in 2 months, to shift the congress from in-person to virtual to provide technical solution. And a lot of the burden are shifting from project managers to IT people to, people with technological background. So if you look inside your team, of course, you want to save your people in a way. So either you see who can shift between the teams, who can take upon different roles, or all the roles and responsibility are changing, who can adapt to this new situation, or what kind of people you need to hire moving forward.
I guess that's one of the biggest questions in general, right? Kind of how will our companies look a couple of years from now? And I guess it's going to be quite different in the way the teams are going to be kind of constructed. Ori, you have joined this industry fairly recently, considering especially kind of like how well known you are and kind of like how much difference you made in the industry already. But you come from a marketing background. Right. And so with that lens on other industries, comparatively, how well do you think, between the two of us and nobody else listening, how well do you think our industry has done in general in this crisis? Do you think we've reacted properly? What are your quick learnings from how we reacted?
For a marketing perspective, so I think that in general, before I speak about marketing, I think that our industry was still, what I see, was able to react and respond fairly quickly. You see every provider, let's say app provider, shifted to a virtual provider, or even venues are starting to introducing virtual technology solutions. So I mean, on that side, I think we've reacted fairly quickly. But if I look from a marketing perspective, I think what we were lacking, or we are behind a little bit, it's about educating the market. I came from, before joining Kenneth's group, I worked for a startup that have created an infrastructure to charge electric cars. That was in the days that there were not a lot of electric cars on the road, and people didn't understand why should I need to shift from electric. I have a regular car running on regular fuel, and it's working for me. It's really comfortable. Yeah. And why do I need this shift to electric? When sustainability was that much on top of mind. And we have focused a lot about educating the market, the why. Why do you need to move, to move electric? And I think this is something, if I now go back to the meeting industry, I think that it was something that we were still a little bit behind. So how do we educate our delegates to participate in the virtual meeting? How do we educate the sponsors? And I spoke about that earlier. And how do we educate the association? And how do we bring this whole virtual world in their top of mind and educating them with marketing tools?
Yeah. With an industry that's so diverse and has so many different players in it, who do you think will majorly drive that change? Like, will it be associations? Will it be PCOs? Will it be maybe somebody that's coming from the outside, technology providers that we didn't see coming as defining our industry? Who do you think will actually drive the change?
Bias here, but I think that the only players that see the entire picture is a PCO. Yeah. Because we are the one who is actually connecting the dots. So we see the clients, we see the delegates, we see the sponsors, we understand what is a scientific program, we understand how an association is working, we sometimes manage an association. On the other hand, we are actually the one who's contacting the venues, the suppliers, the convention bureau. So we are actually, and providing the technology, of course, sometimes through technology providers, suppliers, but we are actually the one who's connecting the dots. And therefore, we should be the one who's driving it forward. Yeah.
That's a huge responsibility, I think. Do you see new players coming into the market? Because if we did meetings, we had our major kind of partners were convention centers, hotels, AV suppliers, you name it, right? Convention bureaus. So those are the ones who kind of the key drivers of the industry. So now with kind of like a different focus on not just technology, but kind of like going back to what is this industry about? It's about kind of disseminating knowledge, facilitating discussions, and facilitating connections. And we are beyond just doing that in live meetings. So who are players we need to think about getting more involved in our industry, that we need to get onto the table at the table with us, so we can actually have that meaningful discussion and meaningful change moving forward?
I mean, it's a good question. I think that we might be surprised about who will be the companies who will make a change. We probably don't know that, but you said facilitating knowledge and you said facilitating or networking opportunities. So I think there are some startups that a few that I know, but probably there's more out there that we don't know, that are specializing in connecting people. If it's by interest or by knowledge and so forth. If you connect already the people you know, and it's easier to, let's say, in a way to bring on board also the content. And so you have you have two things you already have in your platform. This is something that can surprise us. That's one thing. The second thing is the word platform, because if you look at the shared economy model, if you look at the bigger players before COVID, like Uber, like Airbnb, they provided a platform, but people provided the content in a way, which something that we're probably going to see in our industry. So something that will bring on board a platform that will solve a lot of those things that you've mentioned. But I don't know, we might be surprised.
Yeah. I think we need to keep our eyes very open, because I think this is the time to get new players on, like get them a seat at the table, because I think they can add to the conversation. Yeah. Looking at the industry as a whole, and going kind of more meta now, it was an interesting time to really realize kind of like what our industry structure that we've built with our industry associations. You have IAPCO, you have ICA, you have PCMA, you have MPI, you have this huge variety of different industry associations. Like what is their role in a crisis like this to help people out, to educate, to kind of lobby? I think we've learned some lessons. I'm not going to say good or bad lessons, to say there was a lot of lessons learned. Do you think the industry will change as a whole, as a construct, the way we organize ourselves out of this? Like, we talk about meetings, but when we say, hey, we should change our meetings, shouldn't we start with ourselves and say, hey, we as an industry, we might have a bit of an outdated model? It's a very loaded question, I know, but
it's a question about what is the future of association. Let's start with that. Yeah. Because and it's something we speak with our association clients. It says, if you're in a medical association, if you have 1,000 members and you want to advocate about something to World Health Organization, for example, what's more strong, if you have 1,000 members or 10,000 followers on LinkedIn or on some sort of social platform? So the whole shift from members to followers and the whole idea of creating communities might be stronger in the future than the conservative association structure. Now, we actually realize there's some overlap, or there's a lot of overlap within our industry, or the associations within our industry. There is an overlap, right? There is a competing association that speak about there's IAPCO, you mentioned ICA, you see a PCMA and API, you see GIMIC and EIC. There is an overlap. Maybe at that time it was the right thing to do. Everybody specialized in their own thing, and of course we understand that IAPCO is for PCO. That's why you need it, and this is why we provide the accreditation stamp, and we the quality assurance and the education. There's the value for that. But then what are the value with other association? So I think that this shift will happen, but this is really for the long term. It's not going to happen. I don't feel it's going to happen tomorrow morning. We are an industry that usually, the transition could be a little bit slower than in the, let's say, high-tech world and so forth. But that will happen, and then eventually it will happen. We're returning more to communities than associations.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I know this is such a difficult one to answer, because it's something we've been gotten so used to, and kind of everybody carved out their own little route there, or their own little kind of like niche. But I think we learn from this that if the industry changes, if our product changes, the industry has to change with it. And we have to really adapt to a new reality. And I think that needs to be one of the next big questions for us as well, to be relevant to members, so our members can be relevant to their clients, and therefore provide relevant products.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I guess we're both in the middle of it, and hopefully can do something to it.
Gonna start the shift.
Exactly. So on that note, kind of like really kind of like now to wrap it up, kind of like lots has happened and lots of things we say kind of like that have been challenging for us. But what do you think will be some of the good stuff that will come out of this, that we will look back at and say, this was really important that this happened, that this is something that we look back as a positive change?
I think that if we stay optimistic, so I think that one of the positive thing is that the industry came together. You just spoke about the industry, but it really came together very quickly. Different association with different objective, put everything aside, join forces to work together to ensure business meeting will come back as soon as possible. And we all got closer, even if we're competitors, and even if we are suppliers and a company, and that was a very positive shift. The second thing is, as we mentioned, it forced us to work much more faster, to be more agile, to react fast to the changes. And we spoke about the skill set and the burden, let's say, on the IT people and so forth. But I think it's at the end of the day, it will be positive. It will be positive that we'll be more technological in a way, more creative, more innovative. And that's the acceleration that I spoke, and I think that's a positive thing. But again, it will need to balance back in a way a bit, because we do understand the value of business meeting and we want to go back to in-person meeting together with the, as we mentioned, the hybrid component. So hopefully that will be the positive outcome of this.
I think that would be wonderful. And I think if we get to that point, that we just take all the positive, but also enjoy coming back together after all of this, and realizing how valuable the meetings industry is, and how valuable it is to have this opportunity to come together, and how many things we've taken for granted in the last 3 years. I think that would be one of the best outcomes of all.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're looking forward to meet again. I mean, everybody's, they're craving to meet again. We're stuck at home too long.
I know. I push my meetings always a little bit further. The next time I'm going to see you guys, it's going to be 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. And so it's a bit frustrating, but the first opportunity we'll take, of course. Ori, thank you so much. This was extremely insightful. I think there was a lot of nuggets in there. I took my notes. So thank you so much for being available and having this conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening.